In the last 2 weeks, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has become the most high-profile Democrat in America. His daily briefings are playing to a national audience on television. He's made tough announcements like banning everyone in the state from holding non-essential gatherings. Thanks to Cuomo's skill at press conferences, he's closer to the center of this world-changing story than almost anyone in his party, closer than Nancy Pelosi, closer to Chuck Schumer, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Cuomo is far closer than supposed presumptive nominee Joe Biden. Biden has practically vanished from public view, and that's both by design and, sadly, by necessity. Suddenly, Andrew Cuomo, who has never run for president and would never win a normal primary in a normal year, is suddenly being widely talked about as president. And other Democrats are watching this happen. They now all want to be Andrew Cuomo, and you can tell. Yesterday, Governor Klan Robes Blackface of Virginia ordered everyone in the state to shelter in place and not go outside except for essential errands. That order lasts until June 10th. June 10th is 71 days from now. We have literally no clue what the world will look like in 71 days. And yet Governor Blackface claims he plans to keep his state's population home until then. And to show he means it, he's warning that anyone who goes outside improperly or hosts a private gathering of more than 10 people will be fined or jailed. Message? I'm not the sniveling moral coward I appear to be. In fact, I'm strong and decisive like Andrew Cuomo. Meanwhile, other deeply mediocre politicians, including Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C., are doing the same. Bowser is threatening otherwise law-abiding citizens with jail time if they violate her command to stay inside.
We don't expect that we will have to issue any fines and jail penalties because we expect the people of the District of Columbia to comply. We do, of course, have penalties at our disposal, but I don't expect that we will have to use them. That's certainly my hope.
Oh, please. She can't even pave the streets. But you're seeing threats like this all of a sudden everywhere. In Washington State, Governor Jay Inslee is holding press conferences announcing that people who go outside without permission will be jailed. Businesses that open improperly will have their licenses revoked. So think about this for a minute. Democratic leaders are threatening normal people with jail time for going outside. But at the same time, they're letting actual criminals out of prison in very large numbers. From Cleveland to Philadelphia to California to Washington, D.C., officials are releasing inmates from jail and also ordering police to scale back radically, in some cases, any law enforcement. In New York, convicted sex offenders are going free. In King County, officials plan to release hundreds of inmates. Maybe they'll be resettled in the homes of law-abiding people arrested for going outside. In fact, now that we've mentioned it, they probably will. In early March, Bill de Blasio told New Yorkers to hit the movie theaters rather than worry about coronavirus. Now, according to the New York Post, de Blasio's administration wants to release Jose Gonzalez, a man accused of murdering an EMT by stealing her ambulance and running her over. Meanwhile, in Seattle, habitual criminal Francisco Calderon threatened to stab 2 men with a syringe. Can you imagine? And it was merely the latest in a very long list of crimes. But thanks to coronavirus, police released him almost immediately after arresting him. He's likely to go on to commit more crimes. Jason Rantz is a Seattle area radio show host, and we're happy to have him tonight. Jason, good to see you. So you're hearing people, notably the mayor of Washington, D.C., widely mocked by people who actually live there, announcing people who violate her orders will be imprisoned, but at the same time, they're letting actual criminals out of prison. What do you make of this?
It's absurd. It's some news media that is covering a whole lot of stuff having to do with the coronavirus, which means there are some ideologues who are basically able to sneak in some of these social justice causes. Remember, you've got politicians from Washington State to Washington, D.C. that believe that the justice system is inherently racist, that it goes after communities of color, that cops are all evil. And so now that you have an actual tragedy that's taking place across the country, both from a health perspective but also an economic perspective, people aren't necessarily paying as close attention to some of these pet projects that a lot of these politicians want to push forward. I mean, the case that you mentioned in Francisco Calderon, that's the 75th time he's been convicted about a month ago, 2 months ago. Now he gets caught again and almost immediately re-released out into the public. This is a person who's going to commit a murder. And only then will politicians here in Seattle give a damn. And it's the same all across the country, and that is a shame.
It's just a tragedy that America is facing this crisis at exactly the same time the worst people on the planet are in charge of so many places. the most frivolous, the dumbest, the most narcissistic people ever to lead anything are running our cities. How'd that happen?
Well, and it's worse than that, too, because remember, as we are saying we're going to release some prisoners from jail, as we're not going to book most misdemeanor charges, we're also closing down gun shops because we're calling them non-essential. We're also closing down offices within different counties for people to apply for a concealed carry permit. So we're not even being allowed to protect ourselves. And we got here because a lot of big cities are run by progressive politicians with a younger demographic that are out there actually voting these people into office. Part of me says we're bringing this on ourselves. Now, it's not the fault of the folks who obviously don't back these politicians, but I do think that this should be another wake-up call that elections matter. And they are coming into November. They're trying to defeat President Trump. That means a whole bunch of other politicians who are progressives are counting on that anger coming into the ballot box, which means we all need to vote, and we need to make sure we're keeping bad politicians out of place, and we need to shine a spotlight on these issues. When we tweeted out this story on Francisco Calderon, they quickly started to change their tune on it, and we've got to do that. It's up to us.
Well, yeah, I mean, in many ways, this stuff matters much more. You know, you can be mad about what's happening nationally, but if they're letting rapists into your neighborhood, you know, that really matters. Jason, thank you for your updates on this stuff. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in Virginia, Governor Clanrobe's blackface is threatening people with jail time for going outside, but that's not the only offense against justice in his state. Early Sunday morning, 3 men broke into a store in Arlington, Virginia, right across the river from Washington. An employee who was living inside the store at the time, partly out of fears of getting infected with coronavirus, opened fire on the burglars, wounding one of them. Non-fatally, but wounding him. Happy ending? You'd think so. Not in Arlington. Prosecutors there have arrested the man. He's being held without bail. He faces charges that could place him in prison for up to 20 years. Again, he's in jail now without bail. Jawan Zuber is that man's boss.